So we got an overview about the global outlook. So let's take a look into the future of tourism in Asia Pacific. We'll have a panel discussion, but first we'll have presentations. But let me just invite my panelists up on stage. So with me joining the Insights into the Future of Tourism in Asia Pacific, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Assistant Professor at the School of Hotel and Tourism Management at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, Dr. Anu Liu, as well as the Head of Asia at OAG, Mac Patel, the Research Manager at Euromonitor International, Herbert Yum, and the Head of Cross-Border Payments India and South Asia at Visa, Sridhar Keparungan. Please take your seats. And so we'll have presentations from each of our speakers. And so for the first presentation, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Anu Liu.
Hello. Yeah. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invitation by PATA. So I fully agree with Andrew's presentation that forecasting is very hard, but unfortunately, this is the job that PATA gave us to do. Okay. So as Andrew just said, that now we have, yes, on one side that we have already, the world has already opened, so we are embracing the tourists back. But on the other side, we have the inflation challenges. So how will the inbound tourism or the international tourism market behave in the future? This is what we are going to present today. And in terms of structure, we not only present the key findings of our forecast, we also present the structure of the market. We would like to see if the market structure will go back to the pre-COVID situation. And this is the overall forecast of the Asia Pacific region. And we can see, in line with the last 3 years during COVID time, that we still offer the scenario forecast with the mild, medium, and the severe 3 scenarios. So if we look at the medium situation, that by 2025, in total, the visitor arrivals to PATA region will come to almost 800 million. And we can see by 2024, in the medium scenario, it will recover to the pre-COVID level, which is in line with the UNWTO forecast. And in terms of the structure, North Asia is still the dominant region, followed by with the Americas and the Southeast Asia. So this is the overall picture. Then we come to the regional level. For Americas, again, by 2024, it will recover to the pre-COVID level, and we can see in terms of the South market structure, the destinations within this region is the dominant, they are the key players. For Northeast Asia, I think the situation is similar. By 2024, go back to the pre-COVID level, and we can still see China is the dominant market in Northeast Asia, followed by Hong Kong, Macau, Chinese Taipei in Central. Then this is the Southeast Asia. Again, same pattern. And in terms of the market structure, we can see that in the future, in the next 3 years, China will go back as the pre-COVID period. That China will dominate the Southeast Asia inbound tourism market. Then for South Asia, again, by the end of 25, that the visitor arrivals will reach almost 19 million. And if we look at the market structure, Bangladesh is similar to the pre-COVID level, the largest market, followed by US and UK. Then this is the West Asia, but in our data sets, there are 39 destinations. For West Asia, we only include Turkey. So indeed, this is also the forecast for Turkey. By 2025, almost 60 million, and the market is dominated by Russia, followed by Germany and Bulgaria. Then this is the Pacific market. We can see by 2025 it will reach 33.3 million, And in terms of the market structure, interestingly, in line with the pre-COVID data, the US is the largest source market in the Pacific region, which is a bit out of our expectation. But if we go deep into data, we can see that because Hawaii is included in the Pacific, and also in terms of other island destinations, US is the largest market. So although we say Australia and New Zealand are not the largest players in this region, but considering the other small island economies, US plays a very important role. Then we go to the destination level. First one is our host. So by 2025, go back to 1.4 million. And we can see India is the largest source market, followed by China, USA, and the UK, which is similar in line with the pre-COVID level. Then if we look at US, okay, by 2024, go back to the pre-COVID level. And in terms of the market structure, Canada, Mexico, or the neighboring source markets, followed by UK, which is the best friend of the US. Then if we come to China, again, by 2024, go back to the pre-COVID level. And the key source markets are Hong Kong, Macau, Chinese Taipei, Korea, or the neighboring source markets in Central. Then we have Hong Kong here. We can see, again, Hong Kong is always dominated by the Chinese visitors. Thailand. Yeah. When we generated the forecast, and by that time we can see Thailand by 2024 is close to the pre-COVID level. But I think given if we use the latest data, we believe that Thailand will recover to the pre-COVID level much sooner. And we are happy to see that the Chinese tourists are coming back to Thailand. Singapore, similar to the Thailand results. By 2024, go back to pre-COVID level, fully recovered, and we can see Indonesia, China, India, Malaysia are the key source markets. Then Turkey, I'll skip this one because we have already seen results. Australia, again, the largest source market is New Zealand, and we can see again by 2024 recover to the pre-COVID level. Then based on these results, we can see that, okay, so by 2025, we can see the recovery rate will reach around 115.5 compared to the pre-COVID level, and the South Asia is the fastest region that recover in terms of the recovery rate. Overall speaking, we say all the key markets will recover by 2024, but it also depends on the local economy, and also we say the inflation rate in Central, and I think more importantly is the collaboration between among all the destinations and source markets. So this is my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. An Yu. And just to let you guys know, our 39 destination reports are now available on the PATA catalog. So of course, our government members, it is complimentary for you to download today. If you want if you also email Dr. An Yu at the following email address, or of course, or you can also email us if you have any questions regarding the destination reports. So our next presentation is from Herbert Yum and Euromonitor. So Herbert, over to you.
Hello. Yes. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Paul. My name is Herbert. I'm from Euromonitor. I'm happy to share our company's insight, and especially how we believe the best way, not only for government to lead, but of course for government to partner with businesses and even the local community to help the market or country to transform into a better sustainable tourism destination. All right, so just a quick brief to people who are not familiar with Euromonitor. We are a global market research company based in UK. And me personally, I'm actually based in Hong Kong and overseeing the research work in APAC, especially for travel. And for today's agenda for my presentation, I will start with a macroeconomic outlook in Asia Pacific specifically. I would say Andy's presentation earlier, I actually cover lots of points that I'm going to cover. But for the macroeconomic outlook, I'm just trying to focus on the comparison of global average versus the key market in APAC. So as you can see on the chart on the left-hand side, we show the year-on-year growth of selected market, and they are actually shown by real GDP growth. And if you can see that the global world GDP overall is growing by 2.6%, so I would say it's not a very stunning rate after the pandemic, because we do expect a swift recovery after the pandemic time. But then China, probably one of the largest economy in the world, has a very optimistic growth rate of 5.2%. However, does it mean that China is actually the only market in Asia that's driving the growth? Obviously not, because we can also see that the growth in India are also very optimistic. So similar to the point that Andy and Dr. Andrew raised, is like China and India gonna be the growth engine of APAC in terms of the macroeconomic growth. But then we also need to understand that the emerging market and the developing market growth is also catching up. It's 5.3%. It's not really behind China or India. So I would say APAC is definitely the key focus market for the growth of the economy. But then, apart from the fast-growing forecast that we've foreseen, it is important to understand that the inflation, which makes some of the Western markets suffers a lot, is actually doing good in Asia Pacific. As we can see that the world inflation is actually still remain high, 6.9%. But APAC, the average inflation is 3.9%. So we are at an advantageous position in terms of encouraging consumers to spend in APAC, because they are not less worried about the cost of living in comparison. But then, does it mean that consumer will just spend on everything and just like take my money and that's it? Our consumer insight data actually shows, tell you a message that for travel specifically, there's a free trend will drive this year's travel recovery in APAC. The first one is in a gray color, it's called leisure. So we believe, yes, of course, the leisure travel is the key right now. However, the leisure travel, so it's like a combination of business and leisure travel. So like me and other speakers, we are coming for business purposes. However, we do love to spend some time and money to explore the beautiful landscape of Pokhara. So this is the leisure trend. The other one is shift to online. It's like how demanding the consumer would love to enjoy not only the offline experience, but also the online experience during their travel. And last but not least is really about the immersive experience. So experience is actually the key for travel right now. They are spending money not only because I want to buy something luxury, expensive, they also want to create their moment in the destination market. And what does the survey tell us is the top result, which is the value for money, is actually related to shift to online, because they want to, every single dollar they spend, actually in return of something tangible or maybe something very experiential. So online will be the first step to give the experience to travelers. So before they arrive destination, how they can use the apps, the internet resources to better plan and arrange for their trip will be something important. And for some market, the government actually invest to bring on the virtual reality experience to travelers, that they can get a tips of experience before they actually fly over to their destination. And followed by, after the value for money, we can see that the safe destination, all-inclusive hotels and resorts, they are perfect advantage for leisure travelers to plan and spend more during their business trip. And for the other hand, for the shopping, sports and adventure activities is something that travelers who wish to look for immersive experience would help them to complete their journey. So if we look at the travel data Europe Monitor has, we actually identify that in the near future or even for this year, travelers are prioritizing their experience in terms of adventure and cultural. Of course, the eco-tourism is also important, but compared to the other tourism, they are still at the very early stage. They are developing. We believe they will grow very fast, but it's also significant. But then, when we talk about adventure and culture, we see the market is big. Then what does it mean? It actually means that the APAC consumer, they do value experience, authentic and local culture. So, I just like being cautious of time, I will jump to the consumer insight. So Europe Monitor, we actually publish our global consumer trend report every single year to highlight 10 most impactful consumer trends across the world. And for today's presentation, I will spotlight 4 trends. They are budget tiers, here and now, eco-economic, and young and disrupted. And I will also use the following case study to demonstrate how we can combine the global consumer trend and to be a meaningful story and insight for the travel industry. So we start with the young and disrupted. They are the growing spending power. They are gaining their financial independence. And therefore, especially for Gen Z and millennials, they are willing to spend on novelty experience, travel, and interestingly, they are also keen on saving money. They are not just spend money, they are keen to plan for a longer term of their life. So this is a very positive thing to the industry because they know that their spending is sustainable, is recurring, and they are willing to spend. But then for the budget tier trend, it actually tells us that even though lots of consumers, they have money, but they're being mindful in terms of where they should spend because we know that there's so much uncertainties waiting ahead of us. But then our survey result actually tell us that if we have some more reasons to encourage consumers to spend, they're willing to spend. And we suggest that the loyalty is something that you should consider because it's a mix of transactional and emotional satisfaction, and also most importantly, the personalized experience is what the younger generation looking for. So a more technology advanced, a personalized loyalty program will definitely help bringing the younger generation on board, but most importantly, to keeping the relationship for the future growth sustainability. And then for here and now, we believe that if we can make our customers' journey easy, especially for them to access the product and solution and even make the payment, this will help them to unlock their spending power. This super app example on the right is one of the great examples how the super app allow consumer to plan their trip, spend, and even to prepare for their travel insurance in one go. And last but not least, about the sustainable travel, the eco-economic, which means that the APAC consumer, they do being conscious and willing to support the sustainability agenda. And this actually explains what are the travelers' profile in APAC. And a quick introduction on the pathway to sustainable tourism. Europe Monitor, we do have a sustainable travel index, like covering all the important pillars of factors to make sure that we can evaluate the development status of different destinations. So APAC, the ranking for last year index are actually not as high as European or US market, but then that is like very reasonable because we have lots of developing market. But most importantly, Palau and New Zealand, they are doing very good in terms of developing a regenerative tourism model. And then what they are is actually for Palau government to work with the different organizations to build their own supply chain for the food. So make sure that for tourists come to the island, they can enjoy the food that produced locally, not importing from other destinations, which will save the carbon emission. For New Zealand, they are actually partnering with Union and Maori community just to make sure that when they develop the travel industry, they will share the stake and also make sure they protect the benefit of Maori community, and also help them to get employed and be part of the society. And in Southeast Asia, for the Bhutan, they introduced a tourist tax to help the government to maintain a better environment for sustainable travel. And on the other hand, on the right-hand side, Thailand also introduced a new meaningful travel campaign. So instead of just saying that we need to be environmental friendly, they want to give the meaning for travelers to experience, so that they know that for every moment they spend in Thailand, they will actually learn how they can make their own travel activities be more meaningful. And last but not least, I also want to showcase Singapore example, because Singapore is a very well-developed city, and also they have a very strong partnership led by government with the airports authorities to make sure that they can reduce the carbon emission of the airline there, and also they have the facilities to bring sustainable experience to travelers. And I'm sure for people who already visited the Changi airport, you should experience the very comprehensive and also enjoyable moment. And the travelers also understand that they will definitely be part of the stakeholders who help to transform Singapore into a more eco-friendly and sustainable destination. So I know that I'm already running out of time, but last but not least, I also want to share with you all. Europe Monitor do prepare a promo code for all partner members to use to get our travel industry report with a more affordable price. And this will start on the 1st of June, so tomorrow. So don't do it today. Just wait for tomorrow, and then you will enjoy the discount. And thank you very much for Pata as well. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Herbert. Yep. Yeah, get your exclusive report tomorrow, June 1st, using the discount code. If you want to get the code, you can get it just from our membership team just outside. Okay. So, any questions for Herbert? Here's his email address, and of course there is their website. And we've come to our next presentation, and with that, Mac, stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So, namaste, good morning, everyone. Yeah. So, thank you to PATA and the Nepal Host Committee for inviting OAG to present at today's summit. So, we'll be looking at the Asia Pacific Travel Outlook. So when I was actually invited to speak at this event, I had to think of 3 words that came into mind about recovery, forecast, and where we need to be. So it was reassess, reevaluate, and reconfigure. Because I think the industry is quite dynamic, and there's a lot of different moving parts that we need to actually enable to make this recovery work. And Asia has been a bit behind, but I think the way forward is quite positive, because there's a lot of pent-up demand, consumers are spending, and capacity is coming back in a rapid way. So just looking back at today's presentation, so we'll look at Asia Pacific Outlook and what does the future hold. Key emerging destinations in the region, because I think it's very important to understand the way the recovery has been implemented. It's been a story of 2 halves in Asia Pacific, because you've got border shut down. You've had some markets that came a bit later. How does that operate within the recovery model? And pent-up demand. Will some markets actually see a stronger growth? Some will slow down, and so forth. I think it's very important for the industry at large to understand those trends, because when you're developing products and services, it's very important to make sure that you have the right strategy at the right markets that you allocate your resources. And again, preferences of younger travelers. I think we've lost a good 3 years. We've all aged by 3 years, right? And I think there's been a shift between millennials and Gen Z. Okay, so how do we cater to those different groups of markets? What sort of tourism products do we need to develop for them? And get a better understanding as to what ticks them every day when they get up. And future of travel post-pandemic. So that's currently where we are. And what does it look like in the next 12 months? So I think we need to look back come March 2020. What did it look like? So there were flight cancellations. So the world came to a complete halt because of COVID. Then there was an implementation of safety measures that we have never seen before. Okay, you have to mask up, there was social distancing, and different protocols to actually get to the airport. And whilst aviation did not stop, you have to have flights. Okay, so there was cargo flights that actually pivoted a lot of the passenger businesses that were lost, and people were traveling for various reasons, whether it was for family matters, whether it's for urgent medical reasons and so forth. So travel did not stop, but there were a lot of different protocols that we had to adhere to. Limited flight schedules, empty terminals, social distancing and mask mandates. So you saw all these different signages at the airports out across the world, not just isolated to a region, but it was a global pandemic. Aircraft hibernation. So I think that's very important to know, because a lot of people don't understand that when you actually send those aircraft to the desert, how long does it take to recover them back into operating state? And that takes a couple of weeks, because the way you actually put it to sleep, reactivation takes a lot of work, and there's a lot of investment relating to that. And still today, airlines are bringing aircraft back from the storage into service, and that also requires a lot of pilot retraining, and there's global shortage in that area. So training facilities are full because airlines are trying to quickly revamp their capacity and get that passenger demand back in the air. So again, if you look at tourism systems model, I think this is very important when we understand the context of travel and what does the next normal bring. So we've got three different parts in tourism planning and travel movement. So that's at the generating region, that's a route transit, which is your hubs, air connectivity, and then you've got a destination perspective. So along the way, you've got trip planning, pre-trip planning. What does that entail? It's about understanding tourist behavior. How are passengers booking their travel? Is it pent-up demand? Is it the booking lead time, disposable income, understanding the different generation gaps that exist in the market? So the segmentation becomes very important. The next normal looks at border control. Do we still need to fill in those forms? And preparing for the next crisis is also important, because I think there's a lot of lessons that we've learned from this particular crisis that we can implement at the next pandemic. Health security and so forth. And again, air connectivity, it's all about understanding buying trends, seat availability, dynamic pricing, all the way up to new regulation, digital platforms. How do destination management organization engage with different segments through the digital platform? It's all about using the super app and understanding the booking trends and the marketing channels and the return on investments that you would get from that. It's not work. Okay, I'll just go back. So global airline capacity. So this graph basically looks at 2020 from January right up to June 2023. So you can see that at a global level, we're pretty much back to where we had been, probably about -3%. And that will kind of have a variation as we move forward, because there's a seasonality pattern attached to capacity planning. So I think from a global perspective, some regions have been much stronger in recovery. But if you were to isolate different regions, then it's a different story altogether, which you can see here. This is basically all the different sub-regions within Asia Pacific. You can see there in the blue line that Central Asia significantly, recovered significantly. But if you look at places like Southeast Asia as well, Northeast Asia, it's a bit of a different story. And I think the reason for Southeast Asia's recovery stalling a little bit is primarily because of China capacity. And we'll talk more about China a bit later on, and the importance of China in Southeast Asia as well as Northeast Asia in the recovery trajectory as we move forward. And this is basically a domestic versus international. And you can see there that domestic has been pretty resilient as we were during the pandemic period. And that's purely because the domestic markets were quite large and people were able to travel freely within the domestic market itself. So I think that's where domestic markets held pretty well in terms of the air traffic and capacity during that period. But the red line is a different story because you had a whole steep down capacity reduction, and that came out very slowly as we move forward. So moving forward, so we're about 96%, as I said, and week by week, that will change as we move forward. So I think if I were to look at last 4 weeks statistics, it was around the similar pattern of 2, 3, 4% reduction. Full recovery in global capacity, we don't expect that until March 2024. So that's what we actually predicted back in 2020 as we actually went into the crisis. So when you did the crystal ball gazing, and a lot of people asked us the question, how long do you think this pandemic will last and the full recovery? We did say somewhere around 2024. So I think that takes a long time because each markets were very different in its recovery trajectory. Government policies had a lot to play alongside with that. And but if you look at Asia Pacific as a whole, and you look at domestic and international busiest routes, we've got about 7 out of 10 global city pairs that are actually featured in this part of the world. And if you look at domestic, it's about 9 out of 10. Any guesses as to what is the busiest international city pair in the world today? Any guesses from the audience? Used to be. Pandemic changed that, but it may come back. But currently, it's actually Cairo to Jeddah. Okay, so it's right in the Middle East market. So, and I think that's what changed the dynamics around the pandemic, right? All the city pairs had changed and so forth. So the dynamics are very different. But I think that's a very important point. If you look at the top 10 busiest routes for both international and domestic, it's very high when you look at Asia Pacific context. So you can see there's a lot of travel and the demand, it's still going to be quite solid as we move forward. I think the structure of regional markets will be very different, and the consumers will continue to look at new destination as an option. So I think from a destination perspective, it's also very good to understand who these consumers are and how do you target them through different channels. So I think it's important to get into that digital marketing as well as the traditional marketing in different market segments out there. What's next again? If you look at markets reopening in different parts of the world, we've still got a supply-demand imbalance. And when you look at supply-demand imbalance, you can translate to higher airfares. And that's quite a topical debate at the moment. When will the fares come down? And that's actually a function of different metrics. So you've got competition intensity, you've got number of airlines that operate on that city pair, as well as the seat capacity. So if you take those type of metrics into the mix, then you can safely say that the fares would actually come down. And we have seen Singapore, Japan, for example, where fares have actually neutralized now, and I think it's back to somewhere around 2019 level for certain carriers. But there's less competition and less capacity, you will see that fares will remain stubbornly high. So again, there's a whole degree of complexities around the airfares at the moment. Southeast Asia is very important because it relies heavily on China. In 2019, it was around 25% of arrivals in certain destinations. So for example, Thailand was relying on China by about one in every 4 travelers that were entering the country. So that's quite a significant dependence on one market. So what happens when that market disappears? You got to look for new markets. So I think that's been a big struggle for some destinations till today as to how they've pivoted around that. So I think if you look at domestic capacity, it's still about 14% below to where it was in April 2019. And Thailand probably was the second largest country in terms of capacity in that Southeast Asian sub-region. China importance, it's very important to understand China as a large and the importance that it plays. We talked about India being the next superpower, but if you look at the context of capacity, China is still 3.5 times larger than the Indian market. So in our opinion, we feel that India will become a superpower in air travel, but it's going to take around 5 to 10 years to sort of materialize. And that's purely because of capacity, the demand, and the profile of travelers that India has versus Chinese travelers. And if you look at Chinese domestic carrier, domestic market itself, it's about 88% is domestic. So China primarily is a domestic-oriented market, less so in international. But if you look at it from a number of seat perspective, China does play an important role for outbound travel. Travel restrictions from and to China have been slowly easing, but there's a lot of complexities around the recovery because there's passport issues, there's shortage issues around visa application, and there's other various restrictions that are still ongoing in terms of how outbound will materialize. So it's going to be in a very phased approach. And I think, as I mentioned, it's primarily a domestic market, so they've created the circular economy during that period, and I think that will change over a period of time. It will take some time before we get a strong outbound market out of China. Emerging destinations, when you look at Asia Pacific, and you've got to take that into context of airline development, because if you look at airline development into the dual brand strategies that airlines have evolved, a lot of the full service carriers have actually established a low-cost subsidiaries within that. And if you look at the patterns of the three main ones in that case in point, Cathay Pacific with Hong Kong Express, Qantas with Jetstar, and Singapore Airlines with Scoot. And if you look at the recovery of the full service carrier within that group, you've seen a stronger recovery in the low-cost segment. Okay, so in the case of Singapore, Scoot has actually outgrown its full-service counterpart because they've got different destination profile and they've been able to deploy more capacity in the regional markets where they see potential growth as they move forward. And we do see Indonesia, Bali, Vietnam, Thailand, South Korea, and Japan. And Japan is a bit of a sticky issue because it's relying a lot of inbound travel at the moment, but less so on outbound. So the problem with Japan at the moment is the outbound is a bit slower, but inbound is coming out very strongly because there's a lot of demand for people going into Japan. And that's results of different various factors around currency and so forth. And it's not deterring, like Mr. Staples said about accommodation rates in Tokyo. I was there about 2 weeks ago, and it was a skyrocket situation. And people were still coming into Japan because there's a big, huge pent-up demand, and people still wanted to experience Japanese culture and traditions there. Younger people, I think that's very important to look at from preferences of young people and the way they will travel in the next few years, because it's all about understanding them. That's going to be very crucial. Incorporating technology and artificial intelligence enhancements into the experiential journey process. So effective marketing and engagement strategies will be crucial. And it's all around digitalization. How do you engage with customers during, en route, and post-travel? And I'll give you a good example. So Qatar Airways runs a very successful frequent flyer program. So they actually provide your miles of your whole journey at the time of check-in. Okay, so it's unheard of because usually the airlines would credit your frequent flyer miles about 3-4 days later. So Qatar gives it to you once you check in. Your mileage balance will go up for that particular one-way sector that you're going through. And the whole idea behind that is that when you stop at Doha, you can actually spend those frequent flyer miles at a retail outlet at that airport. So it's all about earning and burning your mileage as you actually go through that experiential journey process. And I think that's key in terms of engagement strategy, because everyone will actually want to be part of the program, because you can actually use your valuable miles to actually redeem for a perfume or chocolates, whiskey, or having a meal at the airport restaurant when you're transiting through the hub. So again, targeted promotions will be very important, as well as having relevant app reach to certain consumer groups. And I think that's going to be the driving force in terms of the apps as well as digitalization by different user groups in the whole travel ecosystem. So again, future post-pandemic, I'm not quite sure if you've heard of terms like YOLO. That's very important. You only live once. So people want this type of experiences because they only live once. They want to indulge in luxury experiences. FOMO, this is generally with the younger people, fear of missing out. So they see people doing Instagram. They see their friends are posting all these different pictures of their trip to Nepal, and they want to experience what they have been through during the experiences there, being there at the right place with the right people at the right time. Then there's certain groups called JOMO, so joy of missing out. So these people they don't have a plan, they just get to their destination and they start booking their travel as they go along the way. Okay, so these travelers are basically living in the present moment. So again, understanding that YOLO, JOMO, and FOMO, and how do you create this sort of clusters, understand them, and target them with relevant offers. So very important there. You've got sustainable travel. I think other audience participants have talked about sustainable travel. You have a big solo travel. There's a lot of YouTubers out there that they do solo travel and planning, right? And basically the older crowd, like myself, we considered booking through travel advisors and travelers who actually travel during off-season because they want to actually get cheaper deals. So budget conscious. So understanding them is very important. Then you've got different generation mixes. You've got the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. So I think understanding the last two groups it is very important. The ones that will actually drive future of travel, and understanding them will be crucial because it's all about being connected digitally and how do you actually segment that and deliver that tourism product to that particular group. Again, generation clusters, tapping into them, understanding what drives that motivation and using technology as a platform and using digital transformation as a way forward to delivering that experiences that may not have existed in the past. Outlook, top 5 trends, new destination swing. So I think where we are today, I think that's a new destination. It's my first time in Nepal. So it's a destination for many people out there. Moving from seeing to experience. So a lot of people are Instagrammers. They like to see pictures on Instagram. So it's about Instagram as a channel to actually move the inspiration to actual experience along the way. Travelers are now seeking more control, so they cross-verify some of the comments that they hear about a destination, and they do their own research. So I think platforms like TripAdvisor is very important and quite crucial in terms of having the right reviews and right messaging. Travel as a means of personal growth, so that's around solo travel, sustainable travel, and it's all about getting to know yourself. And book now, pay later is something that a lot of online travel agencies are actually providing now because it's all about the young segment. They don't actually want to save for the retirement, but they actually want to actually borrow money now, become a YOLO, you only live once, get into that experience, and then pay for it later on. So you don't need to wait until you get 60s or 65 to actually enjoy that. Global outlook, availability of resources. We talked about shortages in global supply chain. Price of oil, that's where it fluctuates, so that will have an impact on airfares. Corporate demand, we still think it hasn't recovered fully, and it may not get into that 100% cycle. We'll probably reach a certain level of about 80%, and that'll be the new normal. Sustainability, so again, in the aviation world, sustainable aviation fuel is a big topic at the moment. eVTOLs, small aircraft that carries 1 or 2, 3 passengers, moving them around. That's going to be trialed by United Airlines, and there's an increasing interest in the product. Indian aviation, so I mentioned earlier, that's a 5 to 10 year timeline because of the way the system is structured. You don't induct an aircraft now, but it takes time to get those delivery of 470 aircraft that Air India has recently ordered. And India will become an aviation hub. That's something that they're aspiring to, and they'll be developing that through the Air India Tata consortia. Saudi Arabia, our friends in the audience there, so we have to mention that because it's a lot of investment that's going into Saudi Arabia. Vision 2030, tripling of traffic in 7 years. Riyadh Air has been announced recently. NEOM, a massive aviation disruptor. So I think that's going to be a disruptor amongst the Middle East three, Emirates, Qatar, Etihad, and I think Saudi Arabia is one to watch. Project Sunrise, Qantas is non-stop from Australia to Europe and USA. That's going to be a disruptor to major hubs like Singapore and Hong Kong. So what does that imply for Asia traffic and Asia destinations where you have different stopovers? And geopolitics, as we heard this morning, how do we navigate around that? That's going to be quite crucial and very important as we navigate through that in the next 1, 2, 3 years from now. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting OAG today.
Well, thank you very much, Mac. And we've come now to our, well, here's Mac's email. If you have any questions, you can also email him. But we'll actually have a Q&A session after the last presentation. Do you gotta get to your flight or anything? Okay, all right. So here's your email from Mac if you need to contact him for any questions or find out more about OAG. Now we've come to our last presentation, and Sridhar, it's over to you.
Thank you. Hello. Hi everyone, very good morning, namaste, and at the onset, thank you to Pata for having us here. I'm Sridhar, I head cross-border payments for India and South Asia for Visa, right? Yep. Okay, and I'm here to talk to you about obviously the future of tourism in Asia Pacific, but predominantly about what we are seeing, not so much forecasting future trends, but clearly how we can work and collaborate with many of you in the room here to help you grow tourism in your respective regions. Standard disclaimers. Yeah, so about Visa, right? Just thought I should show you a couple of slides, predominantly from the South Asia region. So these are reinforcements of how you can enjoy a perfect trip with complete ease and peace of mind when you have your Visa card with you. So this is something specific to Sri Lanka. The easier way to the heart of tea country. The most trusted way to make new friends and a network that you can trust wherever you go. Accepted even in the middle of the ocean, and this is in Maldives. Interestingly, Maldives was one area where in spite of the pandemic, it was one region that saw the fastest recovery, predominantly because it enabled travel bubbles where people could travel safely, get off the airport, go straight to the resort and be back. So I think Maldives did phenomenally well and continues to do phenomenally well as a tourist destination for us. So again, you all probably know about Visa, but I think I should just take a minute or so to bring you up to speed. We are one of the world's leaders in digital payments. Our purpose is to uplift everyone, everywhere, and be the best way to pay and be paid. We're responsible for global commerce and money movement in more than 200 countries and territories. And we work largely with consumers, merchants, financial institutions, and government. We enable payments. But our predominant partners are banks. Some of you are present here. The key names that were mentioned early on by Peter, I think we all work closely with them. So we have about 4.1 billion user credentials worldwide. That's about, that could be a card, it could be a card on your mobile wallet, it could be a card on your phone, on your watch that you tap at terminals, etc. We work with 100 million merchants worldwide, and roughly we see about 707 million transactions a day. And why am I telling you this? This allows us to have great access to data almost on a T+1 basis. So we have data as of, let's say, 2 days ago in terms of how trends are shaping up. And like they say, payments is the ultimate truth. So when you pay for a service is when you know that you're consuming it, and we get to have a ringside view of how some of this is shaping up. So interestingly, a lot of my fellow panelists today spoke about absolute numbers and recovery, but interestingly, when it comes to spends, we are seeing that we've recovered in Asia Pacific. In terms of transaction volumes, yes, we are, then the numbers are lower because I think fewer people are traveling, we'll get there. But in terms of the fewer people actually spending much higher, ticket sizes have gone up. So we see both across Asia Pacific, the issued volume and the acquired volume. And let me explain, it's a bit technical, but issued is when you have a card in your country and people are going outside your country and spending. And acquired volume is when people from other countries are coming to your country and spending. So in terms of both issuance and acquiring, Asia Pacific is doing very well, more so in acquiring where we've gone ahead of the pandemic, of pre-pandemic volumes. The dotted line that you see there is the 2019 index. This is a bit of a busy chart, but broadly explains the black line, the dotted line is again the index of March 2019 spends, the quarter spends, and this is how we are in March 2023. And this is, I think the China travel recovery should provide additional tailwind for further growth across the region, but this is where we are right now. Countries like New Zealand have grown significantly in terms of outbound volume spends. Singapore has been a great recipient of inbound volume spends. Cambodia, for example, again, huge surge in outbound travel. Countries like India are seeing a combination of increase in outbound as well as increased inbound spends. So just again, the blue lines are your outbound spends and the golden lines are your inbound spend numbers that you're looking at by various countries in AP. So I think a lot of my fellow panelists have spoken about trends. So what are we seeing? Clearly, as per us, again, indexed to spends, international travel is back, and it's back with a bang. We are seeing a values reset post-COVID. So I think clearly there's a move from being a purchase economy to an experience economy. I think a lot of younger travelers, and again, the whole concept of generation is blurring now because there are people who are traveling and not specific to a generation. There are people who are looking out actively for experiences. Sustainability is a big thing. There are a lot of cultural and environmental concerns, as I think some of the previous speakers spoke of how it's becoming a big determinant in the way people want to travel, or at least have it on top of mind. But the biggest thing that I want to talk to you about today is digital, right? It's clearly influencing the reshuffling of destinations. So we've seen a huge change in destinations like Bali, which were like number 14 earlier, and now suddenly have come up to number 3 within AP. And I think a lot of this reshuffling is happening because of digital, because the younger segment is looking at influencers. There are people on YouTube and Instagram posting about these experiences, but more so that everyone wants to go and now be part of an experience. And I think somewhere that ties up with sustainability. Andrew, one of the top things that you shared as part of sustainability is working with local communities, understanding local cultures. So I think it's all about doing something different and posting it on Instagram or posting it on social media, because people are consuming social media like never before. And one of the things that we saw post-COVID and during COVID, interestingly, is our spends on a card not present, as we call it, which is online spends, grew rapidly. That's because people who never accessed online before, during the pandemic, started to access online, and that started to become an increasing way for people to pay, to explore, and that's starting to show up in the way we are seeing online spends really go up, also in travel. Another interesting thing that we saw during this time was the increased usage of mobile wallets. Again, not surprising, but the mobile has become the ultimate source of everything from your morning alarm to your payments to your mails and everything. We are seeing increasing adoption of the mobile wallet. We are also seeing increasing adoption of contactless, which for us was very interesting because it ties in very closely with the pandemic, with the concept of safety, and more people are now tapping their card or tapping their phone at acceptance terminals, and I think that's a trend that we must all catch on to. There's a quick call out on how we are doing on contactless. Sorry, some of the graphs seem a little clipped, but we've grown contactless at a much faster pace, and these are physical card present spends when people are traveling outside the country. Increasingly, and this is not just a generational thing, again, like I said, during COVID, people did understand online, people did get comfortable with online, and newer technologies like tap and go really helped, and we're seeing a huge surge in contactless transactions compared to non-contactless. So this is the point that I said I would speak about the most, and I know we're a little tight on time, so I'll try and run through this quickly. We work with tourism boards across the globe for actionable insight. Tourism boards are often keen to understand, they understand the profile of the customer coming in, they understand which country they are from, but once the person lands in the country, tourism boards do not have the data of where the person's traveling within, what are they spending on, and so on. And this is really where Visa plays a role in working with tourism boards to support you on this. So we work on visitor profiling based on card usage, whether the person, what's their nationality, what's their spend, typically what are their transaction values, and what are the merchant category preferences. And I'll show you some illustrations shortly. So we help provide insight into, let's say, a tourist from X country behaves very differently from a tourist from another country. So how do you address this tourist? If you have an outreach program to that tourist or that country, then the messaging that you need to do is slightly different. Card payment share, and of course on tourism growth evolution. So I'll just quickly give you some illustrations before I hand it back to Paul for questions. So one of the things that most tourism boards are pretty keen on understanding is where are the tourists to their country coming from. Of course, they have that in immigration data, but this speaks about spends, like I said, and that's something that not many tourism boards today are privy to. So we did this work for one tourism board, which is a beach destination in itself, and wanted to understand, let's say, people from a country, where are they traveling, what are their beach travel preferences, and how do I understand that, and what therefore are they looking at spending once they come there. So this is, to the left is a profile of travelers from a certain country, and when they travel to other countries, what are their beach location preferences. And this tourism board also was keen on understanding their tourists versus tourists of a equally benchmarked destination. Let's say we took a sample of countries. This is just again an illustration, and then determine how people were spending. So for example, folks from UK in that location were almost 22% on buying apparel and accessories, but the same folks visiting a benchmark destination, which was also a beach destination, were just doing 6%. Similarly, how lodging spends vary by country. Again, apologies, but the numbers seem to have, the font sizes seem to have changed in the presentation, but broadly gives you an idea of what we can do. Yeah, this just a breakup of tourists by various countries, where are they spending. So clearly some tourists from certain countries are over-indexing on shopping, which I think is a great thing. And while tourists from other countries are over-indexing on things like lodging and restaurants. But broadly, these are the key areas that tourists spend international tourists spend when they visit. And another thing that we heard from tourism boards is once people come into our country, what are the various cities they go to? And again, like we said, we have spend related data, so we are able to support them in understanding their profile of travelers better. So people coming into X city, do they stay in the city? How long do they stay? What is the next city that they go to? And kind of, understand the whole tourist journey. Right? So stepping away from data, just a quick call out also on sustainability, given that that's the central theme of the conference. Visa works with our partners to enable sustainable tourism. Our contributions are typically, our focus on transit, because public transport is definitely something that you must encourage tourists to use, like the metro, etc. And they wouldn't stand and wait in queue and get one of those local metro cards, but if you can kind of enable them to use their existing payment instrument to simply tap and go, you'll see a lot more acceptance of people using public transport. A focus on small communities. I think Mayur, you mentioned earlier that Australia was among the top, Herbert did, sustainable tourism destinations. They've done a lot of work, and we worked with the Australia Tourism Board in trying to drive campaigns such as Where You Shop Matters, where we predominantly focus our campaign on getting people to shop at smaller sellers and businesses. We focus on the concept of giving back, because that's something the younger generation certainly wants to do not know how to do it. So a program that we partnered with Venice called Visa for Venice allows people to find ways to give back to the society. And right there, it's a very here and now thing. And more importantly, we're working with certain countries where we've launched Visa Eco Benefits, where we are focusing on empowering our travelers to make these locally and sustainable choices, so they can figure out where and how to offset their carbon footprint. They can figure out what is the impact of their travel, and some part of what they spend gets contributed to planting trees and so on and so forth. So a bunch of things that we have as part of the Visa Eco Benefits package. Please do reach out to me if you're interested, and I will happy to connect you. So there are other areas of collaboration, typically data and analytics, which I spoke of till now. We have consumer insight. We also do joint marketing with our tourism board partners. So we ran something with Singapore Tourism. We did something with Sri Lanka just before the pandemic called Repost Sri Lanka. So we run some interesting campaigns. Our predominant messaging and amplification is through our partner banks. Like I said, we have 4.1 billion user credentials. We have it all through our partner banks. So if there is a messaging that needs to go out in partnership with the tourism board, we work with banks to, on data and analytics products like Travel Predict, where we are able to tell a bank that X amount of its customers are most likely to travel in the next 6 months. And then we are able to work with our partner tourism boards or any of our partners to then amplify certain specific messaging to the bank's customers. We also work on acceptance programs. Like I said, I think for a tourist, payment is a big moment of anxiety. Some time back, the anxiety was around RT-PCR reports and so on. Hopefully and thankfully, a lot of that's settled now. So payments now is still the #1 anxiety. People walking in, exchange rates, what are they getting? Are they getting enough value for money? Are they paying much more than they should? So to get an international tourist, most tourism boards and most countries need to start adopting widespread international card acceptance. I know it sounds a bit self-serving, but at the end of the day, when we speak to our customers and try and get feedback from them, this is one pain point. And I think for any country that's looking to grow its tourism, it's important to start and grow the card acceptance, because at the end of the day, the international tourist has a card in their pocket. So broadly, this is what I had to share. Predominantly, again, digital. I was talking to someone in the morning and they said, things have changed and we want to understand what's changed. I think understanding the customer, getting to them just as they plan to travel and putting your message across to them. Digitalization allows you to do that, and we are happy to help you along the way. That's me. That's my contact information in case you need to reach out to me after the presentation. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Right, since we're actually way over time, so we won't do a panel discussion, but I will take the opportunity to take questions from the audience. We have a mic runner here. Somebody already raised his hand. Please give him a mic. We'll take about 1 or 2 questions from the audience because I do, we are running way over time here. But first question.
Hello.
Okay,
My question is directed to Herbert Yoon sir from Europe Monto International. I just googled about regenerational tourism model in New Zealand and Papua New Guinea, which was presented in one of your slides. But after googling, I did not got any much information. So I would also like to mention some of the few models that we had practiced in Nepal. In Nepal, we have a small tourist village just 70 kilometers from Pokhara. 10 years ago, it was only known to few, but now in this new year, all the hotels are fully booked. In context of Nepal, in near Kathmandu, there is a village called Dapcha, and it's a beautiful as heaven, but it's dead as a city. So I would also like to mention that local bodies, we are trying so hard to promote it as a different level, but we are not being able to do. So can you look upon this matter, please? Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for the question. And it's interesting to know how much effort Nepal have put to grow its tourism industry, and of course in a more sustainable way, and getting the local community into the center of it. This is exactly aligned with the New Zealand example. For the New Zealand example, I'll just give you everyone more context because I don't have time to dive deep into it. It's actually a industry transformation plan that proposed by the New Zealand government. It's still ongoing, so it's not actually something that has already been done. But the good idea is because New Zealand, they do also value their local community, like the Maori community, and they just want to share, make sure that the transformation process of the industry, the benefit can be shared with the local community, not only the big corporations or the leading entity will get the benefit. So that is the idea of the example, and because sustainability is not only about reducing carbon emission, but it's also about promoting the better equality within the society. And I believe Nepal is definitely another great example to mention for sure, because I know that it's still a very developing country, but it is definitely on the right track. And to be honest, I'm also preparing for this year's top 100 destination index report for Europe Monitor. So we will highlight and spotlight different key destinations that's doing a great job in terms of sustainable travel as well as other development of the travel industry. So thank you very much for sharing what you just mentioned, and I will definitely have my eye on it, and hopefully I can actually spotlight some example of Nepal in the upcoming travel index as well. Thank you.
Okay, good morning everybody. Wolfgang Alt, Court China Open Tourism Research Institute. I have a question to Leo and you from Hong Kong Polytech. In your forecast for from 24 to 25 for China, surprisingly you had for Singapore, Thailand, also for Nepal, the importance of China going down. So going up to 2024, but then for 2025, China is going down in importance for many of the destinations you mentioned. What is the reason for the forecast for that?
Thank you for the question. May I confirm that you mean the inbound to China or China to the...
No, China to Nepal, China to Singapore. So you in your numbers for they go up to 2024, but then for 2025 they go down.
I think it's the market share is not the total numbers.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think for China, for example, China to Nepal and to Singapore, if other neighboring source markets they increase, it's a relative number, then the market share of China goes down. But in total, the number will go up.
Thank you.
Big round of applause for my speakers and presenters. Apologies we didn't get to a panel discussion, but just we're way over time, so thank you so much. I know Mac probably has to catch a transfer at some point soon.